On today's episode, we are going to be talking all about the top 5 things that you need to do when you are hosting a conference or getting ready to host a conference, whether it's virtual, in person, whether it's a summit, whatever you want to call it. But when you're getting ready to host an event that size or that big, and you are gearing up, but some of the legal things that you need to take into account and keep in mind. So here we go. Number one, you want to get the name of your conference correct. You want to make sure that nobody else is using that name in the capacity that you're using it for the services and products that you're using for. This kind of goes for all businesses, for all launches, for all different subcategories of things that you are starting. Because if you are now branding your XYZ with this name, or even if you're not branding it, but it's something that you are doing and it's something that even whimsically you're calling it that, but actually somebody else already has that name and is using it in the same capacity, then you want to make sure that you are not infringing on somebody else's trademark. So number one, make sure the name is there for you to use and is yours to use and not infringing on somebody else's trademark. How do we do that? Easy, simple steps that you can use before you name anything is literally a Google search. Google is your best friend. It generally will knock out a name in like 5 seconds if somebody's already using it. And, make your Google searches a little bit more robust than just the name itself. You can say, the name and in the industry or the services or the region, and then just kind of like make sure that you're covering all different grounds that could be applicable to you. And generally, a quick tip on that is the fact that if something is trademarked in the USPTO, which is a national trademark, you probably can't use it. But if it's just something that's trademarked regionally or within a state, then you just have to be considerate about the region itself and not the national aspect of it. But that kind of takes me to the second way that you do a research on the name is going to the United States Patent and Trade Office, because the USPTO is a great resource. It's a free tool that you can actually go into and see if there is a name that's available for you to use and is not being used by somebody else or trademarked by somebody else in that sense. And so if it is, you can't use it in the capacity that maybe you were wanting to use it if it's trademarked in the same classification. And so just be careful on what you are doing and how you're doing that. And also, you can go to Instagram, you can go to social media as well. And those are really quick ways to figure that out. Another fourth area to look in for a name search on your own is going to your state's database also to see if anybody has filed an LLC or any other type of entity with that particular name. So those are quick, easy ways for you to figure out whether the name that you want to use is for you to use or not. And it's kind of pretty simple to do it that way. Number two thing that you want to keep in consideration is the platform that you are using to sell your tickets. Now, that platform could be an outside service provider, a software. It could be a membership platform. It could be your website. And also, what kind of transaction software are you using at that time? So, are you using Stripe or using something like that to do your credit card transactions as well? And so the reason you need to know about this is a couple of reasons. Well, number one, you want to see their terms and conditions, and you want to also know their privacy policy, because at the end of the day, your members, your people who are applying, your attendees, they are going to be sharing a lot of their personal information with you, including their credit card information. And so you want to know what you are accessing through your website. And you also want to know what a third party is going to be accessing through your website and through your sign up. And you want to make sure that your privacy policy is clearly stating all the ways the personal information is being used, it's being accessed, why it's being accessed, how you're going to be using it, if you're going to be sharing it with somebody else and who you're sharing it with, and also kind of giving a link to the third parties' privacy policies as well, so people are aware of it and they can go and check it out as well. And of course, check your state's privacy policy requirements. I always think that going with the most stringent privacy policy out there is probably the best practice, because you never know in the world of the internet, which is now such a globally connected world, that you are not sure who is signing up for your event, especially if it's going to be online and especially if it's virtual. Then you never know if it's going to be somebody from outside or overseas or out of state. And so going with the most stringent privacy policies out there and complying with them should be the rule of thumb. And you're protecting yourself then from any type of penalties. And you're also protecting yourself from anybody coming in and saying, well, you did this, you did that, and you're violating my privacy policy, and we didn't know this. And so it really takes away all of that cumbersome nature that could be there if there was a violation. And ignorance is not an excuse. So please go and check out. Generally in the United States, the most stringent policies are coming out of California, and generally, the GDPR, and now a lot of other countries or areas and regions have joined the bandwagon of really creating privacy policies that are narrow in nature and limited in nature with regards to consumer protection. And so they're wanting to protect the consumer. And so you want to have a privacy policy that is in alignment with those laws out there, like from California or GDPR, which is from the EU, or Canada has a far more stringent policy than some of the states in the United States. So just check out what you have to comply with and make sure your privacy policy is there. Again, privacy policy is required. It is not an option. So please have it on your website. Please have it wherever you are going to be accessing the information, and have it available to your user at that time, the consumer. And another thing that you want to have on your platform is your terms and conditions. And so the terms and conditions could be kind of the contract that you're going to be having with your attendees. Is setting out the terms of the conference. It's setting out what the attendees will be receiving in the conference. And that kind of goes into my number 3 requirements. And number 2 and 3 kind of mesh together. And 3 is having a contract for the attendees. And that contract can show up as a contract itself, if the platform allows you to put a contract, or it shows up as the terms and conditions under your, when they're signing up and making a payment. There's always a little box there for terms and conditions. And so that could be also where your contract is sitting. And the idea is to share with your client or the attendee at that time the terms and the services that you're going to be providing, and the boundaries of what you're providing and what you're not providing also. And so you want to share with them the price. You want to share with them the refund and exchange policy. You want to share with them what if they have to cancel, what will happen and how does that look. You have to share with them the deadlines that are there as well. If they have to do certain actions in order to attend, then those deadlines should be there. An outline should be there. What is their access? Are they getting access to just what's in the conference, or do they have post-conference access also? And is there a time limit to that as well? And so that needs to be in there too. And intellectual property, who owns the material and the content that you're sharing with them, and what can they do with that material and content? So do they have a license to use some of the stuff, or they don't have a license to use it? Or is it just something that they can only have and they can't share with somebody else? So you want to put that into your terms and conditions, so that way people are aware of what is part of the contract and what is not part of the contract, or the attendance. And, again, things like, what you're not providing, like room accommodations, you may not be providing, but also food. And if you are providing food, then tell them which food you're providing. And then later on, maybe have something where you are also saying that you are going to be providing different types of food. And then, that's a later on thing, but that's not part of your contract. Other terms that are important in the client contract or the attendee contract is the money aspect, of course. How much money are they paying? Is there a payment plan, or do they have to pay upfront? And when is the deadline for the last payment, if there is a payment plan? Again, force majeure is important, because as we've seen in the past, things happen. And sometimes it may not be such a big global event. It might just be something very particular to you or to the place you're living in. And so have a force majeure clause, have a backup clause to know what's going to happen in that event. Are you going to refund their money? Are you going to just push it over to another event or another time and venue? So have that written out clearly as to maybe the various options, depending on the type of event that happened, or just a blanket, hey, we're just going to cancel and refund. So those are just some things to think about and include in the attendee contract. Oh, another thing that you want to include in there also is the model release, so that you can take pictures of them and post them for your promotions and marketing as well. There's definitely more elements to the client contract that you're going to be having with your attendees. And so that's definitely another whole conversation that I will have in another episode. But in today's episode, these are some of the essential items that you can have in the contract, but definitely there's more information like confidentiality and also disclaimers where you're just kind of saying that, hey, I'm not going to be responsible for the outcomes of any of this stuff. Everything that people are teaching there, I'm not responsible necessarily for the content. And they are coming on their own merit, and you are listening or acting on your own merit as well. So just kind of like letting go of some liability that could inadvertently be yours just because you are the host of the event. And so be very cautious about some of those liabilities that could pop up unexpectedly in the event something was to go south. The fourth thing that you want to have or think about legally if you are hosting a conference is your contract with the educators or the people that you're collaborating with. And this could be with the vendors or even the educators that are coming in or any other third parties that will be there. And so you want to have a contract with them. The contract should clearly state what services they're providing, if you're compensating them at all, if anything, for their services, and what your expectations are from them with regards to the type of services they're providing, the comprehension of those services, and then what support you expect from them in return. So it could be just, hey, I want you to send out email blasts to your email list, or it could be, I need you to post at least 3 times between now and the event for the event on your social media. The idea is that the expectations are clearly stated and they know what you are expecting in return for the services as well. And they are getting exposure. But if you're giving them money for it, or if you're giving them compensation of lodging or food, or, it could be all of that, or it could be part of that, or it could be something of that, right? And so have that written out so they know exactly what to expect. And they know what your expectations are as well. So that there's no confusion on that aspect. And other things to include in that vendor contract or a educator contract would be also the intellectual property. Who owns it? Who owns that intellectual property? Who owns everything that they're putting into? And is it jointly owned copyright, or is it jointly not owned? Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to use the information that they're providing freely, because this is your event and this is your, hopefully something that you might be doing more often. And so you want to be able to market what you've already done and market in a way and promote in a way where you're not going to be limited in nature. So having those intellectual property expectations and understandings in the contract is very important as well. Now, if you are promising them something like an email list or the names of the attendees, then that needs to be disclosed to the attendees as well, that you're going to be giving their names out to all the collaborators, educators, and vendors that are participating in the event, because that's just part of the privacy policy. And that kind of goes into what you're doing with their information and who you're sharing it with. So they're well aware of it and they can actually say no to it also. Another important aspect of this contract with the collaborators and the educators or the vendors is an out clause for you, and perhaps even for them, depending on the type of reason that they need to leave, or giving them enough time to give you before they say, we can't make it, right? The reason is because life happens. Things happen that are out of your control. And sometimes you just have to completely cancel or reschedule. So have a plan of action written for yourself. You don't necessarily have to transcribe this plan of action into your contract, but you need to have a plan of action written out for yourself that in the event something were to go wrong, these are the steps I'm going to take. This is the kind of compensation I'll give to the educators or to the vendors, or these are the alternatives that I'll offer them if something were to happen. That way you are not blindsided for unexpected situations, and you already have a plan of action on the side, and your contract kind of allows you to have that grace and flexibility to implement that plan of action. So have a termination clause that kind of talks about that, for example, this could be an option that if there was a cancellation, then we will reschedule to a future date and we will use your spot. You will be again offered first offer for that spot, and nobody else will be given that offer. And so that's really important, because sometimes collaborators are, you're really wanting them to be there, or they have actually applied for it. And so it can be a little setback for them too. So think about that and put that into the contract and have those conversations with them too while you're onboarding them as your collaborators. The fifth and final thing that you really need to consider, but there's obviously more things that you have to consider, but these are just top 5 stuff, is the venue contract. The venue contract is essentially who you're going to be using for the event, right? Whether it's an in-person event or whether it is a virtual event, make sure you read their contract that you're going to be signing with them. Make sure that you have that place for the time that you need that place for, whether it's online or whether it's in person. Think about the breakup, the setup. Think about the way that you want to be able to also relax. So the spaces that you might need for the conference and some of the, refreshments and beverages and all that stuff, and how often is being replenished, and just also decor, the tables, what kind of tables are they providing, what kind of the basic stuff that they're giving, audio, visual, all of that stuff needs to be part of that contract. And you also want to have trial runs. If it's on virtual, you want to be able to make sure that it's working properly and things are going to be smooth on the day of the event. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this was super helpful. I know this was helpful. And so do me a favor and share this with your friends and family and other people who can benefit from it. And also subscribe to Law Chat, because if you don't, you're missing out on future amazingness that's coming out of here. I hope to see you soon next time, and stay tuned.